Did you know that fear is a trauma response? Trauma happens in the mind when we feel like we don't have control anymore. Now, if you're spiritual like I am, if you believe that God's in control of everything, fear happens when you believe God's not in control anymore. That's what you've done. You've taken a moment and you went, oh, look at that. God's not in control here. Everything went bad. And now everything's awful because Satan has come and destroyed my day. So you're convinced already that it's not God that brought this moment to you. You're convinced that something else brought it. We like to call him Satan. The problem is that Satan comes from within us. Satan comes from that trauma. You see, when you get traumatized, your brain immediately goes into defense mode. And in defense mode, you don't go after things that you would normally go after because you have been traumatized. You are now afraid. So you won't go do the thing that makes you afraid. That's the trauma response. You now have fear about that issue. And trauma can happen directly to you. You can see trauma happen to other people. And it doesn't matter how trauma enters into your life, it affects you. And it's called fear. Now, if you're spiritual, we call it sin. Because that trauma, that defense mechanism creates a process in you that continually believes that God's not in control anymore. See, you encounter it again. You want to get severe? We'll talk about something like rape. You get raped and now you have a fear response that won't let someone's affection come toward you because you're pretty sure you're going to get raped again. You may not think it or say it right off the bat, but when you get put in the situation, the trauma hits and you explode inside because you don't know how to deal with that trauma response. You go into psychology and they'll try to fix your emotional status and tell you to talk about it and it's going to be okay. And they're not wrong, because talking about it helps you dive into it. And if you dive into it, you can see what happened. You can see where your fear started, because the moment you start talking about why you just blew up at everybody, the memory of it will come back to your mind. You'll remember when the fear entered your life the last time. And if you're willing to go into your mind and look at it and talk about it, like the psychologists say, what you actually do is allow God to come in and tell you the truth. It wasn't your fault. You didn't bring it to you. The fear that came to you didn't come from your own volition. It came from somebody else, something we're born into. That's why we call it sin, because it's not your fault. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. But we have a hard time tying all this together. No, that's just fear. Everybody has fear. No. Whoever told you that lied. You're believing a lie if you believe that everyone has to have that kind of fear. If I have fear, it's the fear of the Lord. But we don't like to call that fear. We like to call that faith. It takes up the same space. See, when you have faith in something, you can't have fear as you know it in something. Because your faith is actually the fear of the Lord. I am so convinced that God's in control that he wouldn't do it like you're saying. I have faith. I have fear of the Lord. I am so convinced that God is going to take care of it, that your inability to see it is fear. And because you believe it, you believe that fear, it's going to happen again. You act differently. You no longer act like Jesus. You act like a guy that used to believe in Jesus and now doesn't. You act like a guy that used to believe God was in control of everything and now you don't. Because that's what fear does. Get rid of your fear. Not by willing it to happen, by accepting that God's in control and you're not.